when Zach and I originally thought about creating a weekly podcast, we might have worried a little bit. Oh gosh, are we really going to be able to come up with material every week about drugs, alcohol, addiction, harm reduction? Is that possible? It turns out we've come up with a slightly different problem. There's so much going on at all times in this area that we can hardly fit it all in. We have to kind of debate what's the hottest topic on people's minds. And we now are creating the U.S. News and World Report on drugs, alcohol, addiction, and harm reduction. There's enough to do a daily show, but unfortunately or fortunately, Zach and I have, some minor other commitments that prevent that. So let me begin by talking about something was just announced this week, yesterday, and it's maybe not something that everybody pays a lot of attention to. I pay a lot of attention to it. It's the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. They come out every 5 years, the Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Agriculture, and each year they have an alcohol section. And that alcohol section is like a thermometer about American drinking and historical attitudes. In 1990, the Dietary Guidelines said, alcohol has no dietary value and only dangers and health decrements. Its use is not recommended. Just think about that. In 1990, America's primary health organization said, you really shouldn't drink alcohol. And so that's like, well, let's just debate that. Or maybe that's a good idea. In 1995, a strange thing happened. A woman named Marion Nestle was head of the alcohol committee, and she's a food anthropologist. And she said, alcohol has been enjoyed throughout the ages, and there are data saying it has some health benefits in moderate amounts. And the storm began. If you think we've gotten over debating abortion or Donald Trump, then you might also believe that we've gotten over debating alcohol in America. We have not. The high point of one side of this seesaw, in 2010, the Alcohol Committee was headed by a man named Eric Rim. Eric Rim's not a guy who's selling cigarettes individually in a parking lot. Eric Rim is the head of the Department of Epidemiology at Harvard School of Public Health. And in 2010, his committee announced there was strong evidence that moderate alcohol consumption prolongs life, makes you live longer, primarily due to the fact that it reduces heart disease, which is still, for men and women, the major killer in America. And he said there's moderate evidence that it decreases cognitive decline. And throughout this debate, I've played a role in this debate. In 2001, Archie Brodsky and I wrote a piece on alcohol and drug dependence, saying that the main indicator of any benefit, psychological benefit from moderate alcohol consumption has been a continuing finding that it decreases decline and prolongs cognitive acuity. So the news item is, what the hell are they saying now in 2020? After that crazy bout in 2010. And the news is like puzzling altogether. On the one hand, the World Health Organization has announced that no amount of drinking is healthy or should be recommended. And therefore, they recommend that men drink the same as women, at most one a day. And the Dietary Guidelines declined to change its level of drinking, saying, a recommended level might be 2 drinks a day for men. At the same time they said that, here's a quote. Dr. Timothy Naimi, a member of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, said, the guidelines reaffirm 2 important but overlooked health messages. This in a country that banned the production and sale of alcohol for 13 years, that alcohol is a dangerous substance. He feels that hasn't been emphasized enough in America. And that drinking less is better than drinking more, at all levels of consumption. Zach, let me just throw this question out there. Can you think of any problem with sending out a message like that as a public health message? Like, well, alcohol is dangerous. You should never drink it. Can you imagine any danger spreading that around America?
As you mentioned at the top, we don't have time to talk about all the topics we want to talk about, but let me link in one briefly. So first of all, I work with a lot of high school kids, and so I can do sort of an informal survey of thing. And I'm also happen to be a guy that they can talk to, and they know they're not going to get in trouble for saying that they did something destructive, smoking or something like that over the weekend. And what I can tell you is that it seems to be, and this is played out on a larger scale, that when you have people who are already engaging in some sort of a behavior for one reason or another, and then you have messaging that it's the worst thing you could possibly do, any bit less or none of that behavior is better than any of that behavior at all or more, then it sends, first of all, an incorrect message, an inconsistent message, and it's one that's also inconsistent with their current behavior, forcing people to, if they have information that they need, they're not going to go seek it. They're going to do their behavior in isolation or among the people who are going to positively reinforce them. So that's something I can tell you about things like vaping right now. Actually, so when it comes to alcohol, look how many people are binge drinking now, or drinking, if maybe you don't call it binge drinking, but drinking several more drinks than they're recommending just to get through the pandemic. So the idea being that if you had no drinks, that would be much healthier. Well, that's very one-dimensional, because if you look at any of those people's surroundings, what would that look like? The alternative of not having something like alcohol to be able to help them in their current state, their current mood, or to get through the damn day.
Now, I've written a series of pieces for our good friend Will in The Filter. My latest piece is called How is the Zero Alcohol Project going? The World Health Organization has also said, well, no amount of drinking is safe. What's the likelihood that people are going to be able to respond to that? As you point out, I had written a piece about the pandemic, but I also quoted a piece in the New York Times where a woman wrote in about, how this has been a very forlorn year. And she happened over Thanksgiving to have her daughter over. And she talked longingly about, missing going to bars. And she lives in rural Maine. And then when her daughter left, having a toast with her, and they sang some old Christmas carol, I suppose, because they weren't going to be together on Christmas. Alcohol is a part of life. And I just you've talked about your local experience with kids, and I'd like to get back on that. Because, one question that we'll ask is, how are your kids going to learn to drink? The alternative being, well, my kid's never going to drink his entire life or her entire life. How's that been working for you so far? So let me go. One of the leaders is a man in the Never Drink at All movement, is a man I've often drunk with in Canada, the US, and in Europe, a man named Robin Room, and in Australia as well. And he used to do surveys at the Alcohol Research Group in Berkeley. And here's a quiz question. When you ask people, why do they drink? The overwhelming majority, 80%, give the same answer. Would you have a crazy guess based on your own experience why they say they drink?
Does that have something to do with socializing? As a social lubricant, or?
They find the experience socially and physically and psychologically pleasant.
They do it because they like it.
Get crazy.
Why'd you drink? Because I wanna. Yeah.
Crazy. In the overwhelming number of cases, people drink because they expect to enjoy the experience. And here's an idea. Let's eliminate that experience or tell people not to have that experience. Let me jump to another piece of epidemiological data. Quiz. I'm going to give you a choice quiz. Who do you think is most likely to drink? Higher socioeconomic, wealthier, better educated people, or less well educated, poorer people? Who's more likely to drink?
Well, do you just mean drink at all?
Drink it all. If you say to them, "Do you drink alcohol?" they say yes.
If I were in the upper echelon, I don't see that I could not drink, given that it's so appropriate in so many situations.
A much higher percentage of people who have college educations drink than people who have only high school education. Alcohol is a condiment, if I can use that word, of the upper class, upper middle class lifestyle, and that's
interesting. I didn't actually know that consumption at all was higher among the wealthy, but that makes sense. That's what I'm saying, is that it's almost like, do you set your table?
In New York, when they used to have restaurants, I think if you thought about this. Well, you and I have been at restaurants and had a beer. If you go to an upgrade New York restaurant, which once in a while I used to blunder into in New York, what is present at every single table?
Oh, yeah. I'm not that.
Everybody there, and these are places going to cost you a few bucks. Everybody has a cocktail and or a bottle of wine. Every table. Alta Ann, my older friend, she's very patient, because when I go to a restaurant, I'm looking around at all the tables, seeing what people are drinking. And sometimes I actually ask people. And sometimes, believe it or not, I hope I'm not going over the rails here. If we're in a Middle Eastern restaurant, I ask people if they're Muslim. You may be aware that the Muslims don't drink. That rule seems not to apply to whoever ends up in New York, whether at the UN or doing some multi-million-dollar deal. That group of Muslims, I guess they feel they've gotten a forbearance. By the way, let me read. Here's one little art. The same day that the article appeared saying, well, you shouldn't drink, the New York Times had an article called "Ring Out 2020 with Shots You Actually Enjoy." These complex and composed shots thrive in the moment and are sure to brighten your evening. What kind of a picture do you get? Who's that article written for? It's not written for guys at a bar. It's written for the upper echelon.
Yeah.
Financial guys and international guys.
People who have drinks with an umbrella in them. Yeah.
Although they've gone to straight liquors now. I'll give you what they say. This is from the New York Times. I almost think the World Health Organization is going to shut down the New York Times. As a general rule, start the night with shots lower in ABV, like the bamboo shot. At this point, we deserve a shot. No longer just the domain of hard-hitting one-note shooters. Shots can be complex and enjoyable in both flavor and experience. So they're talking about, these rarefied, high-level drinks. It's a high-end activity. People who have money want to do it. And at one point, people used to say things like, oh, rich people, they're not happy. That was something in the 60s people used to say quite a bit, maybe through the 80s. People don't say that now.
Yeah.
People are highly aware of something. Better off people in America run the country. They have more benefits. They have more control over life, and they're healthier. We're very, very aware that the virus is a downscale event. It hits people with the least resources. So the claim that used to be, oh, rich people, they're all unhappy and they're all, they're all alcoholic. Those aren't the people who are dying of heroin and other related drugs. They're not the people who are dying of the virus. They're not the people who are suffering economically.
So people are making the wrong. Sorry, Stan.
You go ahead.
People are making the wrong extension from the idea that, all right, you have a certain amount of money that lets you live comfortably, but beyond that, what's the money really going to get you? Well, they're making an extrapolation that says people who are rich, they're the ones that suffer most. which is of course
I know our audience demands that I sing periodically.
Yeah.
If living were something that money could buy, the rich would live and the poor would die.
Exactly.
Oh, that's Joan Baez. That's how old I am. Next week I turn 75, by the way. And that's sort of turning out to be true. More, money seems to guarantee life. So, one of the questions that you've introduced, and I'll just end this section on the dietary guide. What should kids learn? What world will they face? And are they going to face a world without alcohol and drugs? Who believes that?
Right.
And then the question becomes, how will they learn to drink? And I'll just mention something. I have 3 children. None of them is an alcoholic. All of them drink alcohol. I've only been married once. The mother of those children was a Romanian, which is sort of like Italy, but farther east. And we never once told our kids that alcohol was dangerous. What do you think we did, though, to make clear, to do as much as we could as parents to make sure that they weren't consumed negatively by alcohol and other drugs?
Well, what are your 3 children doing in life?
My daughter, Anna, whose name is going to come up later, is now a freelance writer. She was a culture editor for Esquire and then GQ. My son is a major mocker, is a Yiddish word, a power guy in e-commerce. And my daughter, Haley, is just completing her PhD at Tulane in educational counseling, especially oriented towards urban populations.
So they're not over drinking for the same reason that we're not making daily 40-minute videos. They have other shit to do. Your favorite answer. They have values that say, a lifestyle and values that say, drinking all the time and putting all my focus into that has nothing to do with the life I want. And they have things that occupy them in meaningful, purposeful ways.
Well put. As parents, what we did tell them about alcohol, we told them and demonstrated for them that alcohol was a benefit of life. And I'm going to end again, I'm just going to have to sing a little. My latest contribution to Filter is the reason people aren't going to stop drinking is because it's embedded in their life. And I happen to be from the Jewish culture. The first prayer they say do you know what a bris is, Zach?
Is it a Jewish?
It's a ritual circumcision.
Oh, okay.
And they put wine on the baby's lips. And they sing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Barei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, who created the fruit of the vine. And Jews revere wine. So the project of eliminating alcohol and telling people only negative things about them is untrue. It is not good therapy or secondary therapy when you work with children, adolescents who are already involved in these behaviors, or a way to introduce and bring up children in a world where they're going to have to confront and they're going to want to confront, and where it's a positive thing to confront and use substances, including alcohol.
So it's like, they could easily say something like, what's bad for you? Having dinner as a family around the table. Let's all stop doing it. It's just one of those things that it's so embedded in our culture. You don't really need, you cited some research to suggest that that lives could be prolonged through moderate drinking for various reasons, but you don't really need that to say, well, why these guidelines when they're just so just not realistic.
Or you could say, at Passover dinner where they drink wine, and I've heard people now say this, well, just drink grape juice. Or at communion, don't have wine. Or at a wedding, don't drink a toast. Or at a wake, to turn to the other side of experience, don't have a drink in memory of the departed. Alcohol is embedded in culture and living. We talked about Muslims. There was an article, one of the 10 best articles picked by David Brooks about two guys who rode their bikes from the Atlantic to the Pacific across Europe. And when the guy was in Malaysia, I don't know where Malaysia is, sorry. As he was pedaling up a hill, a guy ran up to him. I believe Malaysia is a Muslim country. And the guy said, you need this. And he gave him a Carling beer. And then he took him to a wedding where, everybody had a lot of wine, rice wine, he called it. I don't know what that is. And they said, well, look, why don't you just sleep here? He's just a guy pedaling across the earth. And people say, hey, join us. Yeah, well, why don't we eliminate rice wine at weddings in Malaysia? Whose job would that be? All right. I'm going to switch to another topic. That's current events. The dietary guidelines were revealed yesterday. Alcohol is dangerous is a message they want you all to tell yourselves, those people that you drink with, and your children. That's the main thing they want you to know about alcohol.
The idea is no matter what is going on right now, it's still healthier not to drink than it is to have some drinks. Okay. Whatever
that's what they're claiming. Okay. And, I reviewed the evidence that says otherwise. Beret Paris Hagufin. Now I want to talk about Anna Faris. And this is a little hurtful, how Anna Faris is destroying the world. Anna Faris is now famous
for
playing on the comedy role, for it being on the movie Mom series, which has been on, I think, since 2013. It's, I guess, among or maybe the most popular TV series. She and her mother, Allison Janney, are both in recovery.
Right, yeah.
That's what the show's about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to review Anna Faris's life. Anna Faris's life is an open book, including her emotional life, which I'll tell you how I know about it. I don't know her or anything about her except what she says about her. So she started out playing comedy roles in the Scary Movie series and other movies. And then she did something unusual for a comedy actress. She started doing podcasts and writing. And then she became a big TV star. She began appearing in Friends in 2004. And then she's anchoring the hit show Mom from 2013 to the present. Cosmopolitan magazine named her Cosmo's Fun, Fearless Female of the Year. The New Yorker called her Hollywood's most original comic actress. Vulture called Faris her generation's Goldie Hawn and compared her to Lucille Ball, who's the queen of American comedy. So she's not chopped liver. So my little gripe is that her series features her and her mother as recovering alcoholics, talented people navigating their whole life around recovery. But that's not how the Anna Faris I know wrote a book called Unqualified.
Mm-hmm. Did you read it?
And she has a broad podcast called Unqualified, where she talks about intimate relationships and her personal emotion life with a male friend. She's a person who really is open and intelligent and shares. Here's a quick quiz question. Why is the title Unqualified? Do you know that?
Yeah, she loves to give advice, but she admits she's unqualified to give any advice. She just likes it.
That girl's got guts.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on the podcast and tell people how to live their lives. She went to college, but So I read Unqualified, her memoir. It was very interesting. She has used drugs and drink. Intoxication is part of her story. She drinks alcohol. She talks about parties she was at where people may have used alcohol, imbibed too much. She talks about using ecstasy and marijuana in social situations. Speaking, as you said, what people drink and take drugs. That's what we've been talking about. It's a part of social lubricants. In her memoir, she never once mentions alcoholism, AA, or recovery. Those aren't things for her. They're not part of her life. So I had this fantasy. I said, well, when they say, well, you're going to be a mom and you're going to be a recovering person, she might have said, can you bone me up on recovery? You know, I don't know as much as I should know about it. And she must think, well, this is really a great thing. I'm going to help America learn about recovery. I don't know anything about it. I just happen to have lived my life with some ups and downs. But, you know, maybe there's times when I use, and people I know use substances in a bad way, but I don't now. I have a child and, you know, I work 24 hours a day now. So let's switch to what a problem that she hasn't come to grips with, as far as I can tell. We our last, although I might be confused, a podcast, maybe it was a couple ago, was about Shia LaBeouf, and we talked about love addiction. Let's do Anna Faris's love timeline. And I only, again, Anna Faris talks about her love life. That's part of her gig. I only know what she said. In 2020, the news was she's wearing a huge ring, and she confirmed her engagement on the Late Late Show with James Corden. She's been dating cinematographer Michael Barrett. So she's really in love. She's got a giant ring. What a romantic. I happen to know when she met Michael Barrett. She met Michael Barrett in the period when she was breaking up with her last husband, Chris Pratt. Let me give a disclosure now. My daughter Anna Peel wrote a cover story about Chris Pratt for Esquire in 2014, where he talked about how he loves his family and how committed he was to Anna Faris. They broke up in 2017. They got divorced in December. And in that period between when they broke up and got divorced is when she met her current fiance. Anna Faris is a woman who likes love and romance, but it hasn't been 100% good to her. So Pratt seemed like an awfully nice guy. It was a great interview Anna did with her. And he wrote an introduction to her book, Unqualified. Pratt hunts and likes country music. Faris hikes and likes independent music. He played high school football. She was a drama club member, and she was mocked and, you know, she was an outsider in high school. Sometimes opposites work, but this is what he wrote in the introduction to her book. I don't really read books all that much. I mean, I know how to read, as in sounding out words and phrases, sentences and like. I can spell too. I'll stop now. I feel like I'm bragging. But let's just say books aren't really my specialty. On the other hand, Anna Faris is a voracious information collector. She reads, hears, watches, and retains an inordinate amount of stories, from podcasts and NPR pieces to New Yorker articles. She'll often pore over the newspaper while simultaneously watching a TV show and blow drying her hair. She reads the Big Five: the New York Times, LA Times, Seattle Times, New Yorker, and The Economist. This is Chris speaking, Chris Pratt. Whereas I read the Big Five sporting good ads looking for good deals on guns and rollerblades. I mean, what are you hearing when, I mean, it's funny. He's a nice guy. What are you wondering when you hear that description to her sort of memoir, her life story? What's your reaction?
Yeah, how did their romance come to be? Was it for the reasons that you might really want to build a love relationship and scaffold it, or was there something else involved? Because they have nothing in common.
And then, of course, you say, is that really going to work?
Right.
I mean,
I will say that you met Samantha, my wife, and we could probably do that piece. You know, we're just on paper, we look like we're opposites. So it's not like it couldn't work, but it's an indicator.
Well, I would, I would disagree. I would say you share a certain amount of values. Uh, don't
Sure.
you both like to kayak in Lake Champlain?
Yeah, but we share some things that we found together. All I mean is that it wouldn't be a deal breaker. You read this kind of silly article and you don't say, okay, they couldn't possibly form involvements together. But I'm
All right, well,
I'm eager to see round
empirically.
2. Yeah, yeah.
So they got married, I think, in 2013. They separate in August 2017 and file for divorce in December. And that's when she met Barrett. Oh, so let's go backward in her love life. She first met Chris Pratt in 2008. And when she met him, she was still living with her husband. She had a prior husband who she left and intimately became intimate with and engaged to Pratt. And they married in 2009. Now, she moved. How did she get married to that husband? She moved from Seattle to LA to continue a relationship with an actor she met in Vancouver. And she moved in with him and they married for 3.5 years. That story isn't as good as Chris Pratt. They have a good relationship. They have a child, Chris Pratt and Anna Faris. He writes the introduction to her book after they're separated. That husband, she had to pay $1 million to. I don't know if I've conveyed the idea. Anna Faris has been highly successful.
Yeah, yeah.
So that mismatch, she met him as an act on a set in Vancouver, moved to LA, moved in with him, married him, lasted 3.5 years, and it cost $1 million. I mean, that's not pocket change even for Anna Faris. Before she met him, she had sex with a boy in high school whom she follows to the University of Washington. As soon as she gets there, he dumps her. She stalks him. They later reunite, and then she dumps him. He dumped her. She dumped him. So, as smart, as gifted, as daring as Anna Faris is, what's going on with her love life? And let's take a step back. What we're talking about, the overall theme of what we're talking about, are the narratives of her life. And our narratives that we hear, starting at the beginning, is alcohol's bad, don't drink. Obviously, we constantly hear don't take drugs. Anna Faris didn't buy those narratives. There's another narrative that seems to have wormed its way into Anna Faris's head. It's the love narrative, and she talks about that. Her parents met when they were about 19. They're still together, and they told her, you should only have sex with one person in your life, the person that you marry. And of course, that hasn't happened. It's possible that in some way she believed it. We're taught a message about drugs. We're taught a message about alcohol. We're taught a message about addiction. And we're taught a message about love. And the message that Faris got about love hasn't stood her in good stead so far. Back to Anna Faris's life a little bit more. Anna Faris, when you're a major movie star, you might imagine, oh my God, you must have been the toast of the town when you were in high school. But that's not the Anna Faris story. She was an outsider. And you can't, one of the things we discussed is what's trauma exactly? She was in high school when she got invited to a party, and she was invited there for the purpose of people making fun of her and spreading word around school like what a nerd she was. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't count as a childhood, an ACE, an adverse childhood event, because she's already in high school when her parents weren't drug addicts or divorced or criminals. But that hurt. And combining her outsider status, and she's a small woman. She's not people you see in television. She's not one of those people you see in television and movies who you go, oh my God, like they stepped out of an oyster shell in the ocean. She's more of a regular looking person. In fact, one of the things that she talks a tremendous amount about is something I'm reluctant to. She had breast augmentation, and she talks about it at the time. She says, "Well, I'm a feminist. Why would I do that?" And you can do that yourself. So she combined her parents' devotion to a 1950s marital ideal that she seems to have repeatedly squeezed herself into in intimate relationships, some of which seem to have been a poor fit. Maybe the guy she's marrying now is a perfect match for her. God bless her. Her first boyfriend that left her when she got to Washington, the one she had to pay $1 million. And Chris Pratt is just a nice guy who likes to hunt. And she's like, whatever, she's an intellectual activist. Why isn't that something that she's aware of? Why isn't that something that she doesn't say what I just said? You know, I have a romantic ideal that I'm still living by. It's hurt me. And one of the things that I often joke about, if love were a drug, you know how they say to people, oh, alcohol is dangerous, don't drink. Somebody might say to Anna Faris, you know, love hasn't really worked for you very well. She's in her 40s now. It hasn't provided you with contentment, a satisfying, fulfilling relationship. It's cost you $1 million. It's been part of some very hurtful experiences. Love is dangerous. Couldn't you say love is dangerous to Anna Faris? And that's a message she hasn't gotten yet.
So love is dangerous could be a message just the same way that people say alcohol is dangerous, just the same way that they say drugs are dangerous.
And, you know, as we've discussed, love and sex addiction is something they're always batting around between DSM-5 and the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-11. Is sex an addiction? Is it addictive? As have we pointed out, well, Shia LaBeouf is a person who seemed to be willing to kill somebody or certainly endanger their life out of love. So that's our message is we need to go back to ground zero and reevaluate drugs, alcohol, addiction, and love and sex, and ask ourselves, what's going on here? And our bottom line is addiction is not caused by any of the things just abovely mentioned. It's caused by the way people relate to life, who they are, how they see things, how they use things. And until we make that break, we're never going to be able to deal with any of the things. We're not going to be able to deal with alcohol, drugs, love, sex, or addiction until we reach that point of realization. Right? Something else we also discussed, and I know you might want to throw in, there's 5 million topics we've discussed, all of which I thought about you, though, when I read this article in the New York Times. Yeah, we get a lot of material just from the New York Times. There's a new picture out with Tom Hanks, and it stars a German girl who's 12 years old, and she was 11 when she made the movie. And well, how does a 12-year-old German girl get to star in the Tom Hanks movie when she was 11? And her mother tells this story. This focus and willpower that this girl displays, it's tough making a movie. You know, got to concentrate, got to perform, got to be on time, got to relate, got to learn your lines. And her lines are spoken in an Indian language because she was kidnapped by Indians in the picture. I haven't seen the picture. This focus and willpower, her mother, Anne Zengel, explained, has been her daughter's hallmark ever since she was a toddler. Her earliest forays into acting at age 4 had emerged largely out of parental frustrations, she said. Because her daughter had 3 times as much intensity as other children and would act out if she was denied something she wanted. You're a person, you're aware of children with profiles like that.
Yes. Yes, it's true.
You've known a few, maybe even been one. So what did her mother do? This is in Germany. Maybe they're just more sensible in Germany, or maybe this woman deserves, Anne Zangel deserves Mother of the Year. This is what she said. She, her daughter, had to function in society, so we had to figure out how to redirect her energy. That's almost, I thought of you as soon as I read that. You're a person who deals with children, and sometimes their impulses aren't coming out in a positive way, and you help them, and your belief is that they have positive energy. You believe that about them, you see it, and I see your project as being, well, how do we express what's coming out in a negative channel in a positive channel? So she started taking her to acting obligations or opportunities. And this is her quote then. At some point, the thing happened that I hoped would happen, her mother said. She was actually valued for being so intense. Isn't that something? You have children sometimes, and people are saying, oh, and that very quality, which is so irksome or negative or just whatever is going on, is actually a positive quality in the right setting with the right concept. Yeah. And so Anne Zangel, Mother of the Year, her daughter's now like a superstar. You know, she's a 12-year-old girl. And, you know, she's at home, in this interview that Times did, she's at home under quarantine because whatever, school or whatever's going on. And they say, well, when you talk to her in real life, she sounds like a 12-year-old girl. She's giggling and making silly comments. And she was somebody that, her mother's saying, oh, my God, what are we going to do with this girl? I don't know when she says 4 times as intense as everybody else, you can fill in the blank of what that meant. And she didn't like being frustrated. So I just wanted to bring it around. I don't know. When I read, it's the New York Times provides all, alcohol guidelines and dietary guidelines for the U.S., prize cocktails and shots you can have over New Year's Eve. And the story of the Zangel girl, who's a superstar actress, and how our mother was slightly close to despair about what she was going to do with her. It's all there in the paper, and it's all there about love, addiction, and how a human being develops into a positive person despite pitfalls, some personality traits, and how that fits into how we view the world, how we define it as being, what we define as being a disease, what we define as being aberrant behavior, what we accept and what we encourage, how we orient children towards the world. Go on, Zach. You have an idea or two from all that, I know. Why don't you sew it all together?
Well, the mother came up with, just by being our book's called Outgrowing Addiction with Common Sense Instead of Disease Therapy. So the mother came up with the kind of thinking that I come up with on my own, which I'm the biggest cheat that there is. So I get a lot of credit for a couple things. One thing I get credit for is, well, as a kid moves on from one grade to the next grade, look how much progress he's made. You've really changed his life. And I used to get upset by that. Like, can't you see that this is just first of all, human being developing, and second of all, they had to figure things out on their own, but I'll take it. And then the second thing is, well, if the evidence doesn't match the narrative, something's going on. So if you have an incredibly bright kid like she did, someone who could become, I think you said irksome, easily frustrated, whatever it is, distractible, there are always equal and opposite adjectives that you could use in a different context, perhaps. And if someone who clearly has something that smells a lot like passion for something and an intelligence and a drive to do something, even if it's not the salient school task at hand, the mother was saying, well, there must be something, because the energy can't just go nowhere. So in one way, the mother did nothing but be just a good caring, loving mother.
She was
On the other hand,
creative. She
well-
figured, well, let's do this acting thing.
That's true. That's true.
She's
But
not
on-
an actress, her mother. She's a regular person.
Where she got her foot in the door of acting and everything, that was the most uber creative thing ever. But in terms of just understanding that there's something there to redirect, that it wasn't an ailment, it was just something that needed to be redirected so it's productive. And that's being a good parent. And I think most parents would like to do that. If they weren't told that they shouldn't do that, they would. And so you got
It's
a
almost
lot
like
for
you're
that.
giving them permission
Right.
to use their own, what they know already, if they weren't.
And that's why that's the second dimension in which I'm the biggest cheat that there is. Parents give me all this credit for opening their eyes to something, amazing about their kid that the school never would have let them, or whatever it is. Not always, but when I'm successful. And it's like, don't you know that I just talked you into doing what you thought was the best thing to do?
You were, which is how we approach addiction. We'll tie it back up to the guidelines. Alcohol is dangerous. Don't drink. And then people are, they're going to a bar mitzvah or a wedding, or their daughter's leaving for school, or they're, having at a wake, or they're having a toast. And alcohol is a part of their life that they enjoy, that's meaningful, that's important to them. They're being told, oh, ignore those. You know what forget all that. That's stupid. We're better. We've got a better model of addiction in public health. So maybe I can end all this. You and I happen to know several of your many multifaceted aspects of your life. What you describe doing with children is part of what we do with the Life Process program, and that you're one of the most excellent practitioners of. We've been working with a man who wanted to talk about how he lost focus on weekends. He had a good job and he was engaged in the job, but weekends were sort of a lost cause for him, and the things he ended up doing fall in the addiction bin. And you worked with him to, in a way, you could tell he had high caliber intellect. You could tell he was motivated. You could tell he was thoughtful, but somehow he had failed to shift into that gear once he got out of his school work setting, and you helped him to do that. So once again, he's saying, oh, what a great coach Zach Rhodes is. And modest told you, I could just hear you saying, well, I just did the obvious thing. The man has talent. The man has ability. He sort of like shuts himself off on the weekend, his social side, his skill side. Why don't we just run with that? And then, the man's able to do that, and any human being can do that. And then he's giving you all kinds of credit. I can just see you modestly saying, well, I told you what you really at some level knew, and certainly the skill set, the abilities, the desire to reach out to the world, that's already in your bailiwick. It's already in your quiver.
Can you imagine you're holding a stool and you see someone trying to jump to see if there's something over the fence and they can't reach it, and they say, I think there's something over there, but I can't quite see. And I say, oh, here. And then the person stands on it and they say, Zach, I owe you my life for showing me the fence, showing me that there was something on the other side. That's how I feel about this. It's people are ready to make those choices in their lives because it should be obvious to them, except for the messaging that they get to the contrary. And giving permission to think their natural thoughts is sometimes all it takes.
That's the only thing I worry about you, Zach. I mean, that kind of thing makes you a gifted coach and child development specialist. That thing being, hey, it's not me. This person has these qualities already. Thank God I was around to, just remind them. They might have not noticed it, or people are putting a basket over their head. So I just said, hey, wait a second, look at what's obvious. And the only problem with being such a skilled coach and child specialist is, I don't know, we've got to sell your brand, Zach. You've got to sell your gift. And here you are disowning it.
No. Thank you. I appreciate all the kind words. No, I'm not disowning the fact that it's that it's helpful. You know, if someone, I would pay that service. You know, I would pay for somebody to nudge me in the right direction if I felt like I really was spinning in too many directions. But the message I'm trying to get across isn't that I do nothing at all or have no value, but it's more like I bet it's more things are more manageable and within you already than you might think.
And that's what the Life Process program, what's called motivational interviewing, what's called good parenting, what's called good teaching is your job's not to leave your fingerprints on everything.
Mm.
Your job, it's a natural process that you're encouraging, that you recognize, and you'd like to be called a good counselor, a good teacher, a good coach, a good therapist. That you'll take that, but it's not you that this is about. It's about the human being, small, middle-sized, or adult, or old, that you've worked with. So as we, is this the last one, the last before the New Year's? Is that when this is coming out?
Yeah.
So I'm going to, I drink a toast to you, but I already have all my hands filled with my iPad and looking at my notes here.
We'll do one after this.
A toast to you, Zach, and you and I, we've had toasts. Neither of us, perhaps people won't be surprised to learn, neither you or I is temperance or abstaining from alcohol in the pandemic or otherwise. So here's to you, Zach.
Cheers. Thank you, Stanton. Happy Sunday to everybody, too. Happy New Year.
Au revoir.